Good morning, ma'am. Myself Halini, with my friends Enamala, Lavanya, and Tejashini, will present on the topic Theatre of Absurdity in the play Chas by Eugene Ionesco. First, we will see about the author and the plot of the play, The Chas. Eugene Ionesco is a Romanian-born French dramatist whose one-act play or anti-play inspired a revolution in dramatic techniques and helped inaugurate the theatre of absurdity. UNESCO's dramatic art is often traced to such precursors as the play of Alfred Jerry, and it is essentially springing primarily from the nightmarish visions deeply rooted in the author's own mind and experience. As a boy, UNESCO recalled he frequently attended puppet shows. He remained haunted by the reverse relationships of a human being to marionettes, seeing his fellow mortals as puppets are pulled by forces unseen and unexplained, prone to violence either as perpetrator or as victim. Puppetry must thus be seen as one of the strongest verifiable influences on UNESCO's theatre as on modern drama in general. While critic Martin Ellison hailed UNESCO's theatre as a far more effective illustration of Albert Camus' concept of the absurd than Camus himself had ever written for the stage. In Ellison's view, presence on the stage the absurd in its purest form, more true to life by the mere fact of its apparent gratuity, and it is difficult to imagine a more effective illustration of dehumanizing habit than it is to be found among UNESCO peculiarly automated characters whose aspirations have long since been separated from their lives. When death threatens, UNESCO's habit-contained characters will often proceed as lambs to the slaughter in a manner even more creditable than the philosophical suicide described by Camus in the myth of Sisyphus as a characteristic human response to the absurd. Coming back to the plot, it is set in a tower on a remote and sparsely populated island. The Chas present the old couple in what will be their final moments as the old man prepares to leave his testament for all humanity. The testament, it seems, in the form of a speech that the old man has prepared from the raw material of his long life, but which he feels unqualified to deliver in his own voice. For that, he has hired a professional orator who will deliver the speech in behalf of him to the invited dignitaries, including the emperor himself. In time, the distinguished guests begin to arrive, but they were invisible, only visible to the old couples, but later the orator also arrives. However, he is quite visible. When the emperor arrives, who is also unseen, the action is ready to begin. Sure at last that he has not lived in vain, his message about to be delivered, the old man leaps to his death from a tower window, followed closely by his wife. When the orator rises to speak, however, he proves to be deaf mute. Turning at last to an available blackboard, the orator strikes a meaningless gabble of words, letters, and fragments. In the end, the chairs remain, like its predecessors, hauntingly enigmatic, reflecting back on the spectator's own attempts to determine the play's meaning. Over to Tejashini, she will explain on the topic the theatre of absurdity.
Hello everyone. Here I am presenting the topic on origin and characteristic of theatre of absurd drama, which was coined by the critic Martin Eslin, and the term was derived from the essay by the French philosopher Albert Camus in his work Myth of Sisyphus 1942. The origin of this theatre of absurd are rooted in the avant-garde experiments in art during 1920s and 30s. It was influenced by the traumatic experience of horrors of Second World War. It attempts to restore the importance of myth and rituals during this period. It also seems to have been the reaction to the disappearance to the religious dimensions of that contemporary world. Absurd playwrights believe the existence is absurd because they are born without asking to be born. Absurdist can also be called as the thinker, social force, or technician who maintains a strong allegorical or ironical control over their material. The Chasse, written in French in 1951, is considered a major work of the theatrical convention, with the distinction of the originality and the craftsmanship of the Ionesco's dramatics idea of existential writers. Characteristic of the theatre of absurds are listed as: first, the absurd plays raise some basic question of existence. The playwright language is only a communication and a stereotyped exchange of ideas because words fail to express the essence of human existence. The expressing the distress in language. By way of illogical speeches and meaningless plot, they wish to establish a feeling of freedom to make their own world. Next, the re-establishment of man's communion with universe attempt to restore the rituals of life of man. They emphasize on the abstract value of life, vagueness about time, place, and character in a play, expressing the thoughts of absurdity within the drama. The plot of absurd drama include the features like absence, emptiness, nothingness, unresolved mysteries in the plot. Language of absurd play possess a nonsensical language. They are naturalistic to a great extent. The techniques like meta-theatrical techniques, which expose the role of fulfillment, fate, and technicalities of the theatre. Idea of absurdism, exposed as a part of Eugene Ionesco's The Chess, showcase the embedded quality of absurd theatres, proves their own way of multiple features and characteristic trait of its own. Though the absurd theatre is not a positive play, it tries to prove to the man can still live in the futile world. This technique of absurd play is commonly used in the modern theatre. These settings of theme are still lingering in the human society in the contemporary period. Ionesco's unique staging devices include archaic mode of thoughts to articulate the ideas of absurd. Most of the work in absurd category form a satire and can be regarded as a folly literature. They combine the elements of fantasy and nonsensical ideas but have a serious intent to expose or ridicule the auditory and visual effects. These are the characteristic features of the absurd theatre. Next, over to Lavanya.
Hi, now I will be discussing the elements of absurdity that is present in the play The Chairs. As we know, emptiness is one of the important features of the theatre of absurd, and it is highly reflected in Ionesco's The Chairs. Throughout the play, the old couple are alienated from life, people, and the authorities. They live far away from everyone, perhaps in an island, and their real life is also meaningless, filled only with disappointments, failures, and missed out opportunities. So, these aspects disclose the voidness and loneliness that is present in the play. And the ultimate point is when the couple prepare chairs for their invisible guests and they even indulge in meaningless conversations with them. Not only these actions lack meaning and purpose, but also the old man's message that was to be conveyed by the orator towards the end was also a failure, considering that he was deaf and mute. So, all these instances highlight the nothingness and absurdity, which Ionesco himself has stated was the main theme of the play. Another important feature of the theatre of absurd is the lack of communication, or perhaps the meaninglessness of human communication. The chairs mirrors this aspect throughout the play. The language used by the old man and the old woman are also full of repetitions, broken syllables, and nonsensical derivations of words. For instance, when the old woman asks her husband to tell the story, which they titled it as Then at Last We Arrived, the old man says, which I quote and unquote, "Again, I'm sick of it. You have made me imitate the same people, the same months, always the same." So, from this, we could see that nothing much really is happening in the lives of the old couple. They are kind of stuck in their life without any real progress. This also reflects the existential dread felt by the couple. And also, the couple, while addressing each other as husband and wife, indulge in a pointless role play of a mother and a son, which again highlights the broken communication between them. Another instance is when the orator, towards the end, as I said, tries to write something on the board like NNAA, NNM, and some cluster of letters without any real meaning. So this is an attempt to deliver a universal message to the mankind, which again proves to be something that is meaningless, something that is incomprehensible, something that is absurd and stupid. Okay, and it also seems to suggest the very idea of the theater of absurd, that man is living in this universe without any purpose, with no purpose at all. Uh, he is just confused, troubled, and is in clear danger. The other important feature of the theatre of absurd is the unnaming of the characters. The main characters of the play are the old man, the old woman, and the orator, who are not given a proper name in this play. So, this is an aspect or a technique which is used to generalize the themes to all of the human community. The dramatist wants to place us in the role of an old woman or the old man and look at life in its real form. Okay, look at life as a place that has no meaning, that has no purpose in it. So this is a technique to generalize to all human beings rather than limiting its applicability only to the characters of the play. Thus, starting from its theme to the actions of the play and the development of the characters, the chairs highly reflect the wildly irrational and nonsensical world, and it also portrays life as an incomprehensible place. So, all these features are the are the characteristics of the theatre of absurd, which forms the foundation or the base of the play, the chairs. Thank you. Now over to Shivarshika.
Hello everyone. Now we'll see the other works of Ionesco with the absurdist themes. The first play written by Ionesco is the Bald Soprano. When we look into the play, the conversation that starts in the scene 1 between Mr. and Mrs. Smith about reciting everyday chores or everyday work that they do, like everyday normal works that they discuss about, doesn't make any sense. They have a lot of other things to do in life other than talking about just the normal routine that they follow, but still they talk about it, which doesn't make any sense to the audience. And later on, the play introduces characters called Mr. and Mrs. Martin. This conversation between them is very absurd. We will see what the conversation is. They both are conversing that they both have came from the city of Massachusetts to London in the same train in the third class and reside in the 19 Brown Field Street, and they slept in the same bed in the same hotel, and they have a 2-year-old daughter in common whose name is Alice. And then they come to a conclusion that their husband and wife recognize each other and embrace finally. So it just shows how absurd they are, that a wife and husband who has done everything in common doesn't know that they are wife and husband, and they finally know. It's like it doesn't make any sense. It's illogical. About the Mr. and Mrs. Martin, the Mary who is the servant of Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Mr. and Mrs. Smith comments that that Mr. Martin and Mrs. Martin are mistaken, that they are not husband and wife, but that never mind. That doesn't matter, because things should be just left like how they are, because that's what the absurdity themes brings out. Like, world is illogical. Even we try to capture the world into our thoughts and make some process over the thoughts, and then with our intellect, if you try to make sense out of it, but it'll end in vain and they'll be illogical. That's what the theory of absurd says. At the end of the play, again, the conversation between Martins and Smiths is like doesn't make sense. It's like nonsensical truisms of they don't understand the language. At the end, what happens is they couldn't talk to each other in a human language. They just start shouting and screaming, which again doesn't make sense to anyone, which has no logic, no reason, and the world is illogical and absurd. The another play with the absurdist themes by Ionesco is Rhinoceros. In Rhinoceros, first we see two characters in the starting of the play, Berenger and Gian. Berenger is completely contradictory to the lifestyle of Gian. Gian wears nice suit when they meet in a cafe, and Berenger wears normal formal clothes, and then Berenger is alcoholic, and then Jean insists him to not drink or don't drink and do work, and Berenger does a quite normal job which makes him earn enough to live a middle class life, but then Jean says he deserves better or he should do better to live in this society, so to improve himself and to take extra work to earn extra, all such things. So this two characters just doesn't make sense, because when we see the play, men are turned into the rhinoceros here. So men turning into rhinoceros, like everyone in the play totally turn into rhinoceros except Berenger, because he wants to live like a human and make sense out of human. Like at the end, he will be left alone, alienated in the world of rhinoceros, where everyone turns into rhinoceros, and he couldn't communicate with anyone. Even though if he communicate, it doesn't make sense, and what rhinoceros talks, he doesn't understand, he never understands. So basically this absurdist themes, the theater of absurd tries to say that there is no use of using human intellect to make sense of the world. It's all just absurd and illogical all the time, no matter how much you use your intellect, is the end. Yeah, thank you all.